Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What if you could double your energy naturally without caffeine or stimulants in just 3 short months? It's not only possible, you can transform every aspect of your health if you follow the 12-week blueprint we've created for you in the Awesome Health System. The Awesome Health System is a free course where you receive a daily video lesson spanning the most cutting-edge secrets for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mindset, and education. It's something most companies would charge hundreds of dollars for, yet you get it for free when you go to bioptimizers.com. To access your course, register to download the PDF report called 3 Phases of Bioptimization, which gets you access to the report and daily access to the first lesson in the 12-week, 84-day Awesome Health course.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today's podcast, we are going to talk about some things that are a little deviation from our normal podcast, but they're very relevant to people who are living, working, or making their living, or want to make a living online, or if you're in a business position of how you can effectively learn some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, because the world is changing rapidly and you need to get ahead of that curve. It's also someone for younger people who might be thinking about their careers and looking for fresh perspectives of what's working right now. This is going to be a great podcast for you. So today's guest is Paige Velasquez Budde, who is a veteran marketer, entrepreneur, author, and keynote speaker. She is a co-founding partner and the CEO of Zilker Media, an Austin-based agency that builds trusted companies and leaders. During her tenure as the CEO, the Austin Business Journal has named Zilker Media as one of the city's fastest growing companies, as well as one of its best places to work. Those two things don't normally go together. 2 years in a row, it has been listed on Austin's Inno's list of coolest companies. And some of the things we're going to talk about today, why AI search and geo make individual leader visibility critical for health and wellness organizations to remain discoverable. We were just having a private conversation about this a second ago. How PR, micromedia, and thought leadership strategies can help wellness and health practitioners, owners get discovered and trusted faster than traditional SEO. And actionable steps health and wellness leaders can take to elevate their credibility and create a durable reputation without massive marketing budgets. So Paige, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Wade. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's really great because in your background, I can see this beautiful outline picture for people watching online. That is the strategic business influencer. So yes. Funny story. If you talk to teenagers today, compared to when I was a teenager many years ago, we knew like maybe the top sports athletes and the top, Hollywood celebrities, etc. Now, when I talk to people in the younger generation, they're more interested in who the top influencers are in the world.
That's right.
And what's been unique about this process as we move into this influencer economy, that carving out your digital profile in a way that is attractive and can scale is changing everything. For example, if you take a place like college football players are making sometimes much more money than the NFL pros now because they've got a really well strategized media presence, how they develop it, how they get attracted, how they sign deals. And they've cut out a lot of what was really a cemented industry of control. It's changed over Hollywood. It's changed over the influencer. It's changed over sports, but it's also changed business. And I think if I grasp things correctly, this is one of the areas that you're addressing when it comes to becoming Skyrocketing. So maybe if you can walk us through your background, how you came to this place to be the CEO of the coolest company in Austin. There's a lot of people in Austin that are into cool companies. I go there quite frequently. And to make that moniker, that's pretty impressive.
That's one thing that we're really proud of, especially in a
Yeah.
city that's so innovative and has a lot of great companies to work for. But I do think what we've built here at Zilker Media over the past 8, almost 9 years at this point, is really special. And in the work that we do is really incredible. So, a lot of our team has been together for many, many years. That's something that we also pride ourselves on. And we have so much great talent. We have a great, core founding team members, and then we've grown it to just incredible people. All of us are in Austin, but I would say we started a bit in a niche focus, and then we've expanded and grown beyond that. So when we first started the agency, a lot of us had come from a background of book marketing. So if you think of the best-selling business books that you would see in airports all over the country, those airport bookstores, Barnes and Noble, if you walked in and went to the book section. We also did a lot in healthcare books as well. We were really known in that industry. We worked on marketing those books, and we worked with publishers and authors. And what we found with a lot of the authors we were working with is that they were also CEOs, or the physicians that we were working with were also practice owners. So the book really served as a much bigger picture for them. It was an on-ramp back to their business, and they were starting to see that building that credibility, building that visibility for themselves also attracted a strong amount of lead generation and visibility for their businesses. And so that's when we really started thinking about the world and how it's been changing. As you get into more of a digital first world, we're finding that, first impressions online are entirely happening online, whether it's Google or an AI platform that somebody's putting your name into search. And for a lot of business owners and leaders, for a lot of healthcare providers, it's their name that they're searching first. It's a lot of times not the business, because as you build community, as you build relationships, people trust people, people refer to other people. And so we started looking at, we've got to start paying attention to the visibility of leaders that are representing brands, that are representing companies, because that at the end of the day is where the relationship starts. That's where trust starts. And so all these things start to become more important when we look at a brand. And so that's when we shifted, where we weren't just focused on books anymore. But we really looked holistically at what was happening for business leaders and for healthcare providers and practice owners, that this entire trust dynamic started shifting more. And it really was focused on, you've got to earn trust people to people. It's no longer people to logo. There's a lot of studies that I reference in the book, one of those being from Gallup 2024, showing that trust in U.S. institutions and companies across the board was at an all-time low, and it keeps declining every time that study comes out. And that's probably not surprising for a lot of people, but another big study that we look at is Edelman, which is an incredible PR firm known, worldwide. They do a trust barometer every single year. And in 2024, they said that people now trust peers, so people they perceive more like themselves, to the same level that they have trusted authority figures, so doctors, lawyers. And so you're starting to see this whole dynamic shift, as you were talking about earlier. You're no longer, if you're thinking about it, you're no longer tuning into the 5 o'clock news. Most people aren't. It's all on what TikTok is breaking. It's all on, what Instagram influencers are breaking, which a lot of, health and wellness, a lot of business leaders, especially when we talk to these categories, they look at you and go, I don't want anything to do with being online. All of that isn't for me, or, hey, I don't want it to be about me, is a lot of times the hesitation.
Sure.
And, what I say to that is absolutely, it should be all about the mission. It should be all about the impact. But you are trying to climb an upward battle that's going to be impossible to fight if you don't become visible. So we have to do it in a way that's mission driven. We have to think about, what are you already doing behind the scenes that's moving the needle for your clients, for your business, for your customers? And how do we bring the right visibility to that, which is truly becoming a strategic business influencer. And it doesn't mean that you have to build millions and millions of followers. For some leaders and businesses, that will make sense. But for others, it's the right 500 that you need to focus on.
What do you think I'm going to ask the why and the when of why people are losing faith in institutions and authorities, and how fast that's actually happening as this pivot to media first, like digital online media first, as opposed to, hey, I'm looking on Fox News, or I'm looking on, CNN, or I'm reading the New York Times. Why has that happened? When did you see this trend like kind of go the other way? And then why do you think that happened?
Yes. I would say one of the biggest things that we're seeing now is that when somebody sees a company logo, a corporate logo, you immediately know that you are going to be marketed to and you are going to be sold to.
Right.
And that's just the reality. And I think a lot of us in business or in marketing had been conditioned to believe that the loudest brand in the room is going to win. And if you buy the right ad spots, if you have the most followers, if you go viral, you're going to win. And that was probably the case about 10 years ago. But since then it's changed. It's no longer the loudest one that wins. It's the most trusted. And, I think we're seeing that shift really because, there's just been a lot of distrust when you have no visibility of who's making the decisions. It's become a lot more important. People want to know who they're buying from. People want to know who they're working for. And they want to believe in that. And, it's a lot harder too, especially if you're trying to grow a business just in the environment that we're in today. If you have a much bigger competitor that has a legacy logo, you can't outspend them. You just can't. It's going to take so much time. It's going to take so many resources, but you can differentiate yourself pretty easily. And that's by focusing on your most unique asset, and that's you and your people.
That's a really good classification. I'm old enough to remember watching the Larry King podcast. And I remember when Ross Perot was a businessman that ran for president. And he was using the talk show hostess, and it was really unique because he would get on there and he had little talking signs like call this number or stuff. And it was very interesting. And he was, I think, one of the most successful independent candidates. And then I saw when Obama came in, he used a very crude email system to completely change how quickly that he got buy-in from his customers. So he became reachable, not through the party dynamics, but reaching out directly to the people that would get behind his message. And then we saw, during the first Trump administration, that here was somebody that underspent relative to the other guys and was able to take the White House. Now, that's not, I'm not saying these things for political statements, but political is probably the biggest hardcore fight there is. There's absolutely, they're just vicious. It's legal, it's political, it's financial, it's there's a lot of characters in that bloody ocean, and most people don't go in there, and for good reason. As people are on their journey now, and now we're seeing, like you said, the final piece is now people are looking to, if I look at, say, a Jordan Peterson who created his own university academy suddenly, and people, he went on the circuit and wrote these books and got, albatrossed or whatever from his old institutions, and then created a whole new model that's much better. Brett and Heather Weinstein, they were also excommunicated from the traditional systems and came out with a great podcast. Joe Rogan was a Hollywood guy and he went into the UFC, and then and then he got his podcast out of a comedian. Yeah. So, and now if you look at the biggest movers and shakers in the world, they have some sort of brand based on their unique aspects, and they've built out a strategy that gets followers to them. Those are the mega successes, and a lot of people don't see themselves as that. So where do people not get overwhelmed or saying, yeah, I grew up in this old world and, but I don't know if I can interact with this. I really want to, get a bigger reach. I'm not comfortable in all those elements, et cetera. How do you bridge the gap between where somebody is and what they might aspire to be for their mission?
Sure. That's a great question, because like you said, you see all those big names and you see them everywhere all the time. And again, it depends on what your business is. It depends on who your clients are. But the millions and millions of followers, the millions and millions of listeners might not make the most sense for your strategy. And so it is really understanding who you're talking to, who you're serving, and being valuable towards that. The difference is when you have, the company logo, as I mentioned, it's, you're going to be marketed, you're being sold to. But if you are starting to lead with your brand alongside the company, so not in front of the company, not behind, but alongside, you're able to start leading with thought leadership, which is something to teach and educate on, entertain on versus sell. And so that's a really clear distinction. Now, when it comes to how do I build that influence, where do I get started? Because it is overwhelming. Most people are paralyzed in the fact that where do I go? And it should be less about the where in the beginning and more about the why and the what, and getting just really clear on that. So on your why, I have this process that I created, or this framework that I go through in detail in the book. It's called your influence ID. And the whole idea is to build, how do you represent yourself? What does that first impression look like for you and your business online? And I liken this process to a passport ID process because it is very similar. You have to, when you're filling out a passport application, you have to say where you're coming from, all that background information that makes you credible, where you've been, why do you have the experience, or what experience do you have? And then from there, you distill that down into a one-page ID with the most important information. And then from there, you have to look at what are those credible images. And that's going to be, your headshot on your ID that you want to align with those things. And it has to go through a verification process. What you have in your ID has to match up with who you really are. You can't have this ego-driven, personality-driven, brand that doesn't match who you truly are. That's not going to win. It's not authentic. And then lastly, in an ID process, before you get your ID issued, you have to state where you want to go. Why are you applying for an application? What destinations do you want to go to? And that's exactly like, I talk about collecting stamps for the next 3 to 5 years. Is it, acquiring a new level of business where you're hitting a new revenue level? Is it being, speaking on certain stages, winning certain awards, selling your business, whatever that looks like, making sure that you have clarity on where you're wanting to go so you know where to focus your time, because that's the hardest thing for a lot of leaders, no matter what industry you're in, is the time factor. So you have to be really clear on who you are and have the right credibility, but also really clear on where you want to go. Once you have that ID down, a lot of this is doing an audit online and searching yourself in a private browser or an incognito browser. And I would encourage you to do a Google search on a private or incognito browser, because it won't take anything you've searched before into effect, and see what's happening. Also put your name into an AI platform. You can go to ChatGPT, you can try Claude, you can try Perplexity, and see what's coming up, because that's truly your first impression. People are no longer creating first impressions in person. If you think about it, you're always Googling somebody before a meeting. You're always Googling, a potential doctor or a potential brand before you walk in the door. So that online impression, what's coming up on page one, what's coming up on an AI search for yourself is so important. And you want to make sure that every single result is reflecting that ID that you feel is pushing out the most credible, mission-driven, aligned type of message that you want representing you. So really just diving into that is so important. Typically when we do this with a lot of leaders, what we find is they could be found online, but what we're finding is not aligned with how they actually want to be represented, which is a big problem. B, sometimes we search their name and we can't find them because they're not discoverable. They maybe have a common brand name. So for example, if your name is Mary Smith, if I Google Mary Smith, you are buried with hundreds of other thousands of Mary Smiths. So we encourage you to think of your brand name like a piece of real estate and being really intentional. You see, I go by 3 names here, but that really was on purpose so that I had organic discoverability. If you're sharing a common name or a name that's shared with a celebrity or a name that's shared with a famous athlete, we've even had it where a CEO's had a name shared with a serial killer.
Wow.
And so you got to think about if those things are happening, you got to change your name. And what I mean by that is you got to add a middle initial, a middle name, a maiden name to your brand name so that you can completely own search for it. Again, you want to make sure it all leads back to you and it all leads back to your company.
So what you're saying is if I heard it all correctly, is everybody's interacting with social media, and almost everyone that has some sort of business or mission has got some sort of online presence.
That's right.
But gone are the days of throwing up a website and throwing a few pictures or stock photos or whatever, this type of thing, because there's all these data gathering information sites, for example, that are scraping the web, and then they're presenting an image of you that may not be reflective. So if you're going online, you're saying, look, everybody's online, but are you going at this strategically? Right. And the strategy your outline is first begins, it's kind of like any, if you're going to buy a business or you're going to do something, if you do an audit, or if you're going to start a business, well, what resources do I bring to bear here? What do I have and what do I need? That's pretty impressive. Now, where does that fit in with, say, fitness trainer, a holistic health clinic, someone who's doing the circuit or whatever? Like, where does that fit in an audit for them, for example? Like, where do they start to really get granular, as opposed to just taking their whatever idea what they heard from someone else, or what they thought in their mind, or what their buddy at campfire said would be a cool thing? How do you kind of like wash the slate clean of that and really, attack this with a strategic element inside of it, so that you're just not wasting time or energy or getting unfavorable information directed your way?
That's right. So I would say the number one thing is to do that search around your name as a leader, and then also your business name that you're thinking of. One, make sure that nobody else owns it, because that's another, mountain that you don't want to climb if there's already ownership of it. The second thing is just getting really clear on your messaging. So I want you to think of your business just like any other company. There needs to be some sort of tagline. There needs to be some sort of mission statement that's clear, that's concise, that is easily understood. Once you have that in place, then you're looking at content pillars. So I want you to think of 4 to 6 content pillars that you want your brand to evolve around. And a really good exercise to do this is actually interviewing yourself. So asking yourself a few questions, again, of who are the clients that you want to serve? What are their biggest pain points? What are your strengths? What are your areas of improvements? What do you want to accomplish over the next 3 to 5 years? With your business. And then from there, start doing a 360 and asking those around you. So if you can think of, a peer or a colleague or a client that you've served, and asking them some of these questions and seeing what they're pointing out. And are there levels of alignment between what you wrote down and what maybe some of them shared with you as well? That really helps inform strategically what that mission statement tagline could be and what those 4 content pillars could be. And then from then you want to make sure that your website's reflecting that. You want to have a good home base with the website. You want to make sure that your social media, your content that you're putting out is absolutely reflecting that as well. And I can get into what content should look like in a minute. But as you're building your website, just something to really look at is it's not just the content. It's not just the mission that's important. It's also the visuals. Websites are so crucial to have the right visuals so that you build credibility quickly. So when I go to, say, for example, a fitness trainer, I go to a website and I see that big image on the top. That's what we call a hero image. If I just see a stock image of people working out, that is doing nothing for you. Throw stock images out the door as much as you can. Have it be a photo of you in action. Are you leading a class? That would be a great photo of you in action. Are you on a stage talking to a group and teaching? That's a great photo in action. I would also make sure that you have logos alongside that photo in action. So if you have any awards that you won in the past, media that you've been featured on, clients that are of notoriety, that was hard to say. You want to make sure to have those logos. There's something that happens whenever you do that in the world of branding that we call authority by association. So it's saying, hey, if I don't know you, but I'm landing on your website, I know all these other logos that I trust. So therefore my trust is accelerated with you. That is so important, especially on your LinkedIn banner, your Facebook banner, whatever social media you have, because visuals matter. You have 50 milliseconds once someone lands on a web page to make that first impression. Nobody can read in that amount of time. So the visuals are absolutely key.
Funny you should say that, because I think back in time, and if you look at one of the most iconic movies that was created was Pretty Woman.
Yes.
And I always would ask people about that. I says, what's very interesting is, it starts off and you've got Richard Gere with the right clothes, and he's in his car and he's in these meetings, and he's like, it's very clear. Like, you don't know anything about this person, but you've quickly made the assessment. He's a very successful business guy that's, a real killer. And he's got a bunch of hanger-oners around that are grifting off it, but he just deals with it because he's just transactional. And then it cuts to, Julia Roberts, and then she's kind of working the streets. It's like a good girl, kind of things went wrong and things didn't work out. Yeah. And then you set up the polarities. Now, you don't know anything about their backgrounds, how they got there, anything else, but your impression is immediate to who they are. And then, of course, the collision of those two people becomes the plot of the movie.
That's right.
And, or if you look at a Tom Cruise film, he's open up like flying out of a plane or jumping, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day when he'd come on with his muscles or everything, or, like, it's visual impact. Like Woody Allen couldn't play the part.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So much of the prior industry was a prior authority. Jordan Belfort, the famous, sales guy that was the star of Wolf and Wall Street and has that whole thing. He talks about this in his influence program. He's like, you've got this microsecond to make a first impression. And he says, you got to, be sharp as a tack, a person of authority, really clear. Another friend of mine, Jesse Elder, says, I asked him what makes influential people. He says, authenticity, power, and clarity.
That's right.
But even if you have all of those things, let's say you got the imagery, let's say you've got the right friends, the right clients, you got the right photos, like still that's not enough. If I heard what you're saying, those are the base marks. Like those are like the building materials of your house. It's not actually a finished house. And so take me to the next step. Once you've assembled your resources that are going to present this online. And I thank you for that. And I'm sure you go into deeper detail in your book, The
Oh,
Strategic
yes.
Business Influencer, of how to go that. Will be a link on here to get the book, folks. But then how do you convert all those materials into a house? And before we go to that, I got one question for you, because
Yes.
I don't want to lose track of it. You talked about stock image. What's happening what's your belief or trend about AI generated imagery that's now being proliferated around the world, and it's getting really good, but it's, like, it seems like like stock went to like IndyCar on that, or Formula One or something like.
Yes, that's right. And I will say it's getting better. When AI imagery first came out, it was very evident if you were using an AI image. It's a little bit harder to detect now, but again, when it comes to, especially if you're representing your company, like you said, authenticity is absolutely key. So the more that you can create authentic, scenarios that you're posting, especially where you're teaching or educating, those types of things, do that. It kind of likens to Instagram has a great statistic, and I don't remember the exact percentage, but it's in the book. It said that pictures that were taken with iPhones received more engagement than professional photos and professional videos. And that, again, is because people are feeling that they relate more to the photos with an iPhone, the videos with an iPhone, because that's what that's what they're doing every day.
Right.
They perceive it more like themselves in their everyday lives. So,
And the continuity of the medium, I guess, is the same of
yes,
what they're interacting every day. That's another aspect.
that's right. That's right. Absolutely. And so just being authentic. And I think that's what's so beautiful too, when leaders go out alongside the company, whether you're building, a wellness center, a fitness center, if you're willing to step out and be visible with the company and share your story, that's what people can resonate with at the end of the day. That's what people can trust. And that's what attracts community. That's what attracts lead generation. And, you can't do that with a logo anymore.
That's so well said.
At Bioptimizers, our mission is to fix digestion. And a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is, unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
We've gone through I think we're entered the age of corporate suspicion. I think that's
Yes.
all it's current. So what you're saying here, to summarize, is there's an innate corporate suspicion now that you have to overcome, and you do this by authentic, strategic communication in your online presence that's assembled these elements so that you understand how people are going to interface with you initially, because that first impression, if it's not done correctly, they're gone. And then afterwards, you've got to be able to validate that impression with a continuous message, which leads back to your mission, your goals, and what you're trying to achieve, so that a person can quickly grasp, this person is what I'm looking for, or has what I want, that kind of thing. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate. And just remember, you can have all the best content in the world. You can have the best visuals in the world, but if the first impression is off, nobody's ever getting there. So that's why I spend so much time being so tedious about the influencer ID, getting that right, getting the audit right, because you've got to set that up for success in order for everything else to work. And we can get into, okay, once that's set up, now what do I do? Right.
Yeah, let's do it.
So there are three areas of the landscape to really look at in terms of where you should focus your time. There is rented media is one of those aspects. And these aren't terms that I coined. These are terms that have been around forever, but they have changed. So rented media, these are going to be all the platforms where you own the content, but it is a platform that somebody else owns the connection to the audience. So if you think in a traditional sense, advertising is rented media, right? So you can own an ad in the newspaper, magazine. You tell the ad, hey, this is what I want it to say. These are the visuals that I want. But it goes out on a newspaper where, they have the connection to the audience, to the circulation. You don't have direct access to that audience without buying that ad. The other thing that lives up in rented media are going to be your social media channels. So everywhere from LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, you name it. All of that is rented. And that's what surprises a lot of people. They spend time again thinking, if I can just build 1 million followers on this platform, I can be successful. If you are building your audience on rented media or social media alone, you have a huge risk with your business. They can change that platform or algorithm anytime. And they can take that platform away anytime. People that we've seen this 2 really big instances in the past, I would say, 15, 20 years. I was in marketing, this is going to date me a little bit, but I was in marketing when Facebook advertising first emerged. So we were representing a brand that was very well known around the world. We had grown their Facebook page in a previous agency from 2,000 likes to over 1 million likes. And at that point, that brand, it was such like a holistic kind of family brand. It was getting so much engagement, so much revenue driven through that channel. But in the fall of I think it's 2012 or 2013, Facebook overnight flipped a switch. And they said, hey, that's great. You built a following of over 1 million people, but now you're going to have to pay us for us to show your content to the people that are following you. And that's when social media monetization started. And that has happened across all the social media platforms. That's one instance. The second instance is when they shut down TikTok. Every brand that had been creating all of their revenue off of TikTok or any influencer where all the revenue was coming from TikTok, they were beholden to that platform being there. And so, one important thing to recognize with rented media is you've got to have a way to siphon that audience exposure from that platform back to platforms that you own, which we'll get to here in a minute. The next kind of piece in the landscape is earned media. So think about being invited onto someone else's platform or stage to deliver your message. So everything in earned media is going to be any press or PR that you get, any speaking that you do, any awards, reviews that you have online, which are so important, especially for a lot of wellness companies. You want to have great reviews. I would say earned media does a lot in terms of credentialing you. So it is really important. When you think of any press coverage or earned media coverage, I like to think about it in 2 buckets. You have what's called name brand earned media coverage, which is kind of the really big, well-known media logos. So think like a Forbes Health, that type of logo. And then you have what you call micromedia logos, which are podcasts that you could be featured on, industry publications, other influencers that could feature you, blogs. You need a combination of both in today's landscape in order to be successful. we're starting to see a lot of people turn away from mass media and focus more on micromedia because it's individuals that you perceive as more trustworthy. So really making sure that you're balancing both in terms of exposure there. But again, with earned media, you have to rely on somebody else to go out and get that for you. And so there's a challenge with putting all your eggs in that basket because you can't own it. So you have to make sure to have a strategy to bring any exposure that you get in earned media back to now what we call owned media, which is that third piece of the landscape. And owned media is any asset where you fully own the connection to your audience. So I want you to think your website home base, your email list, a physical mailing list, text subscription list, a podcast if you have one and you own it, a book if you write it and you publish it. All of that is owned. And so we want to make sure to have a good lead magnet strategy once you get to the website to get people to give you their email address or give you their phone number to follow up with. That's when you really start building a brand that's valuable, is owning your own data as much as possible. And
but just to validate, just to validate that for a second, sorry to interrupt, but it's like,
no, it's great.
About 10 years ago, I wrote a book and I called it both the back part is Rise of the Digital Republic. And I was a gallivanting digital nomad running my company from various parts, and I'd meet people all around the world. And I would ask people about their country they were from or this kind of identity, going back to your passport concept. And what was interesting, there was a clear delineation between, it was at that time, so this was 10 years ago. So it was people that were under 30 at that time, they'd be under 40 now, versus people over 40. And I'd meet both of them. And if I asked them about what was going on in their country, if they were in the underage category, they didn't really know that much. And the older people did. So there was more of an identity with the country or where they're from or what's the history stuff.
Sure.
The younger people, and this is going to validate your statement. Well, they knew the rules on Amazon, how Facebook, it was Facebook back then, not Meta, Google ads, like they knew all of these digital things. And it came to my awareness, and I called these things the digital republics, is that now these new emerging data pieces from around, like data control pieces, now became more of the sovereign than the country from which they originated from. It had more influence on their fans, where they went, how they did business, what they saw. And if you look at, and to validate your success, almost all of the biggest, most successful companies in the online space, they're controlling everybody's information. Amazon controls your information. Facebook controls your information. Google, YouTube, TikTok, you go down the list. And you made another point. I want to validate what you said. When you're on that rented media, and like I have witnessed the rise and fall of a lot of different mediums and a lot of different people on those mediums for the things that you have pointed out. You know, so as a business owner, I think as we get into strategically putting this together, where do you start today? Because there's all these platforms that you could be kind of going into. And so it's like some of them may not be as relevant and some might be more relevant. Like, is TikTok going to be the fastest growing thing anymore that they're going to, now it's been taken over by the US? Like, I don't know. They got to write a new algorithm. How's that going to play out? I don't know. Right. So how do you look at it strategically? And I know I interrupted. I didn't want to finish the own media, but I wanted to grasp that out because if you've been around as long as I have in the digital world, I've seen what you saw, the rise of great companies getting wiped out overnight. I remember when Google did the shutdown of everybody, they lost 1 million marketers up there, right? Yes. You know, Amazon can pull the plug on your program because, for whatever reason, and there's nobody to interact with. And all of a sudden, a big chunk of your business goes down the drain or whatever.
Absolutely. Yes. When it comes to, I'll speak to rented media just for a bit in the social media platforms, because it's overwhelming. That's something that I get a lot is, where in the world do I start? Because it's overwhelming if you think you need to be everywhere. And the reality is I encourage I encourage leaders, I encourage business owners to pick one or two platforms to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get those down, once you do those really well, if you want to expand from there, great. But if not, do one, at least maybe two really, really well. And it really depends on who your audience is, who you are selling to. So, if you're focused on reaching out to, let's say, a millennial to Gen X woman, Instagram's probably going to be your focus if you have a visual type business. If you are in more of a B2B business, for example, or if you're a little bit more on the health sciences side, LinkedIn is probably a really good platform for you. If you are, focused on reaching, the lower millennial Gen Z kind of, Gen Alpha target, then TikTok might be the place for you if you have visual content. Again, it's not necessarily what's trendy, and I think people follow the shiny object. It's more where the person you're trying to reach is living the most. And all of those statistics of each online platform, what their audiences are made up of, are all online. If you're trying to reach older, then I'd say Gen X and up. Then you're on Facebook or Meta. So there's definitely different options, but you also have to think about what you have in terms of resources. And TikTok is loaded. To be really good at TikTok, you have to be posting at least a video a day, if not more, to really gain traction. And if you just don't have the ability to do that, it might not make sense to pour any time into there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the content beast is real.
That's right. That's right. And the second question I get a lot of times is, what kind of content do I post? I will say there are three categories. I like to think of content as if you had your own newspaper or magazine and you are the editor in chief. So think more like the media than a marketer. So
Brilliant.
So you're that outlet, you're that magazine, you're that newspaper. There's three pieces of content, categories of content that go into that. The first one is what I call more like that you-driven content. So looking at, promotional things about you and your business, or, hey, here's my framework, my ideology, my journey, my story. This type of content can perform really well when you're willing to be more vulnerable, when you're sharing your journey. It can get a lot of engagement. But if this is the only type of content that you're putting out on your channels, it's kind of like filling your newspaper with opinion pieces only or advertorials only. People are going to get tired of that. And you're going to come back to me 6 months from now and say, this strategy doesn't work, right? So I would encourage anybody who's posting content to keep this you-driven category to about 15 to 20% of what you're putting out there online. The second category.
What would you say most people are doing? Like 80 or 90% media?
Oh, yes. I would say mostly it is like 90% most of the time.
Yeah. Right.
And again, you want to share the great things and what's going on in your day to day, but that can't be all you're sharing, especially if you have a business that you're an on ramp back to. The second category I would say is what we call news-driven content. So there are kind of two subcategories to this. One is content or calendar-driven content. So thinking about, are there certain times of the year that your audience is paying more attention to? Mm-hmm. So let's just stick with fitness here for a minute. We're coming up on the holidays. This is typically a harder time, right? Where people are starting to think about it. We're getting to the new year when people are starting to think about their fitness goals and reflect on their past year. This would be where I would be speaking to my audience about all these things that they're going through. What's their plan going into Thanksgiving? What's their plan going into holiday parties? What's a good way for them to reflect on the year and set intentional goals moving forward? So this is all top of mind. If your business is seasonal, you want to be doing content that is calendar driven to make sure that you're meeting your audience where they're at. The second subcategory of news driven content is headline driven content. So thinking about what is going on in the world today that is newsworthy, that is being covered, and how can you speak to that? How can you help your audience analyze that? Especially in wellness, there are so many new studies that are coming out. There are so many questions that people have on these studies. How are you speaking to that as an expert? That's when you start really building that thought leadership. You really start building that influences. You're talking about the headlines that they're reading, and you're adding your commentary and expertise to that analysis. That's a really good way to get traction and engagement. It's also a really good way to get publicity.
You kind of remind me of there's a fellow online, Patrick Bet David. He runs a company called Valuetainment. So he was a business guy,
okay,
motivating people, and then he's moved into a media content, and they have an AI system that grabs the relevant headlines. He decides which ones they're going to hit on their podcast, and he's done that. And he literally came out of nowhere. And I think during the election, he had the most people online watching his show over all of the old media channels, and he's only run this for a few years. So that's how powerful the new tech can be if you're going at it strategically. Continue on with this. The headline driven, and of course, you look at all of the political pundits. If you look at, or the comedians, political pundits and comedians are actually leveraging the same messages. The politicals are trying to get an agenda through. The comedians are laughing about that there's an agenda that they're going through, right?
That's right.
But they're still using the same common element that people say, oh, I need to pay attention because this may influence my life.
Yes. And as you're thinking about it, as an expert in your field, you're already reading all these articles yourself, or you should be, right? So it's just taking that extra step of the thoughts that you have once you read the article, you read the study, and you're either writing or filming content about it. And again, you can be so successful doing this. We've seen just alone with email campaigns, if that headline, that subject line is part of that headline, my goodness, that open rate skyrockets in any email campaign. So that's kind of that news driven piece.
You're kind of working with the tide that's already out there. So you're just riding the waves that are already out there with your unique spin that's relative to your particular audience set.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep. And a lot of times if you're, putting the headline in there verbatim, putting the link of the original article, tagging the original journalist who wrote it, you get a lot more visibility because you're along for the ride on where that's visible online. The last category, the third category for a lot of leaders, a lot of business owners, this is going to be the most important. And this is relationship driven content. This is all, it's all making content marketing, referral marketing in a way. It's just modernizing it. So I want you to think about who are the 25 to 35 maybe most important relationships that you should be building over this next year. So for some people, that's getting in the right clients. For others, that's the right vendor or the right partnerships for their companies. For some, that's the right investors. And so I want you to write down that list. And then I want you to use content marketing as a reason, as an excuse to reach out and start building a relationship with them. So just to put it really simply, the way that we've seen this done really well is by creating some sort of interview series. I mean, it can be similar to what we're doing right now. It doesn't have to be a full-blown podcast like this, but really looking at, how can you involve others in your content as much as possible in a win-win scenario? I will tell you, if you're just doing relationship building the same way people have been doing it for the past 50 years, which is emailing, hey, can we get coffee? Can we get lunch? Can we get happy hour? Nobody has time. Everybody is getting that email 50 to 100 times a week and they're deleting it, especially the really important people, right?
Yes.
So it's looking at how do you make that ask more enticing for them and more of a win-win, because when you do that coffee or lunch, they know they're going to be marketed and sold to. That's not building a relationship. It's really looking at how do you have a peer-to-peer conversation versus a sales to prospect conversation at the end of the day. And starting an interview series and saying, hey, I'm interviewing the top wellness experts when it comes to hormones for women, whatever your specific area of expertise is. I would love to have you on because I really respect what you've built with your company or your expertise. And I think it would be a great fit for our audience. Would you mind filling out 5 questions I'm going to send you? Would you mind hopping on a Zoom call and us recording it? Would you mind whatever the format? And there's many ways you can do the format. Again, that's more of a win-win relationship builder, because you're using your platform to feature them. And when that goes live, they're going to push that out to their entire audience, their entire network, because they want to talk about, they want to share what they've done, but it's also a great way to point back to you. And then hopefully there you're able to deepen the relationship and continue the touch points. But this gets you in the door in a way that they'll remember the interaction being special. They'll remember how much you endeared yourself in that conversation, what a valuable use of time it was for them. Mm-hmm. So it's just a different way of thinking about content marketing. And, some people go, wow, that sounds like a lot of time, but I encourage them and say, hey, the worst thing that can happen is you make a few superficial acquaintances and you have some really valuable content to put out for your audience. That is the worst thing. The best thing that can happen is you point back to it and you say, I have 5 new clients because of this within the past 4 months, or I have, 5 new referral partners because of this. And I would even encourage you, it doesn't have to be a topic about your particular business. Say, for example, I actually met a woman at an event this past week who does primarily, she does fitness training, but her clientele is women executives. It's a very niche focus. Her starting an interview series about fitness as a woman executive, they might not be interested in that. But if she starts an interview series about the women who are mover and shakers in Austin, then these executive women who are her clientele have something to talk with her about. And of course, wellness is maybe part of the conversation. So that's where I would encourage you to think outside the box. But again, you can't be too weighted on any sides of the three categories I talked about. I would say maybe, 40% news driven, maybe 40% relationship driven, and maybe 20% you driven could be the mix. But you want to have that mix to really bring that variety to pull and keep people engaged. And that's the most important thing. Is definitely quality over quantity, because quantity is going to shift as the algorithm shifts. So you're always going to be working through that. But if you have quality of content that resonates and you have a good strategy behind it, that's when you see actual traction in your business.
That's great. But this is super informative. Well, I know you have a lot of other elements that you want to add to this strategic business influencer. We're coming up on the hour. We probably won't get there. But the good news is, based on all those things, and then let me ask, who's the type of person that's coming to Zilker Media?
Yes.
What's the person? First off, if you haven't got a copy of the book, go to the show link. It'll be at the bottom. Get it. And I want you to make sure that you make that available to people to go.
You.
And then second, who is the client for Zilker Media? Why are you the coolest company out there? And why is your strategic business thing? I mean, what you've laid out here, I've listened to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people influenced me. It was very clear, very precise, very systematic. It fired up 100 questions that it will never get to, because I was just like, oh, wow, this is so cool. It's so succinct. So kudos to you on that. You know your stuff.
Thank
so
you.
give us the goods on Zilker Media and the Strategic Business Influencer book and all of this. My listeners are now going to have their interest peaked because they probably realize they're just doing their media messaging all wrong and want to change this now. So let's strike while the iron's hot.
Yes, and it's again, if you're that business and you're trying to build against much bigger competitors and you need that key differentiating strategy, that's our bread and butter. And if you're willing to step alongside the business, really focus on driving mission, driving more impact at the end of the day with just a different lens on strategy. That's what I'd say, hey, we might be a fit to support you, or the book is a great resource for you along the journey, because it does I pretty much give everything away, break it down really tactically. And that's my goal. And the scary thing for a lot of business leaders that I'm getting questions about right now is discoverability is changing. It's getting harder and harder. For your brand to be seen. And if you're doing the same tactics like keywords or pay per click or Google ads and you're seeing a decline, I know that this is impacting fitness. I know this is impacting wellness. I know many business leaders in that space that have come and said that. You've got to start thinking about your discoverability in LLMs, which is AI platforms. It's completely changed. So we're doing a lot of work right now on how to become discoverable through LLMs, because people are using ChatGPT more than they're using Google.
What they say, it's like 15% of the searches right now are already now using ChatGPT. And of course, that was some of the changes in share prices with Google and stuff like that. We saw this just happen recently, and people just look at, Google's down or whatever. Why is that? Well, if you go a little bit deeper, people are using, I think it's 1 million people were using search on, or 1 billion people were using a search on chatbot GPT just recently. So we're seeing this mass migration emerge like in lightning time. So the good news is there's an opportunity there. Yes. You might have been outside of the pool before, but now there's this new thing. And what I've found in our history with Bioptimizers is the time to jump on a new platform is early.
Absolutely. And the brands that have the right foundation are going to be the ones that win in this era. So if you are thinking you can pay your way to AI discoverability, that is not the case right now. I'm sure it's going to change. I know it's going to change, but think about those 3 areas of the landscape that I talked about earlier: rented, earned, owned. You need a strong presence in each of those. The thing to know about LLMs and AI platforms is that it is trying to get the most trusted information out there.
That's the filter that they're using as their algorithm. Like, how do we sort through the wheat through the chaff? Because basically every platform is some adaptation of the past. And now we have a plethora of who's an authority, who's not. And that's where this is going. Wow.
Exactly.
That's
so if you are just focusing on the keywords of your website, all the website pages, that's not enough for you to talk about it yourself. You have to have other websites also talking about you with high domain authority. So earned media in that case becomes really important. Website reviews or online reviews on those types of channels become very, very important. Reddit, we have seen, be a big channel that has become very, very important because it's crowdsourced information, right? Again, they're trying to find the most credible, the most authoritative. If you don't have a presence of your name as the leader alongside the company, that's actually hurting you. It's actually looking to make sure that there are leaders that are visible to help verify and build credibility for businesses. So all of this is becoming a lot more important. I believe AI citations, it's about 60% or more come from true journalistic content. So if you're not being covered in the media right now, you really need to be focused on that. And again, it doesn't have to be the big media, the name brand media. The micromedia carries a lot of weight. So think about industry publications, think about podcasts are doing great, other blogs, that type of coverage is really important for your time. And if you start building on this now, then you will have success. You will be on the forefront on the back end when the algorithm does change, like you're saying.
That's super powerful. So where do people find your book and your company?
Yes. So you can go to zilkermedia.com and you'll learn more about our team. Paige Velasquez Budde, which I know is a little long and hard to spell. So, but you can find the book there. You can find the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any bookstore really. It'll be carried there. The publishing date is November 25th, 2025. So after that date, it'll be available everywhere and in all formats. I will say on my website, paigevelasquezbudde.com, I did put a workbook for the Influence ID that is free. So for anybody that wants to go on, you just put your email in. I promise I don't spam you or anything. It's just to make sure that you're able to get that download. But it is a full workbook that you can print out. You can do it yourself or do it with the team. It's about 18 pages, so it takes a few hours to get through, but it'll take you through the entire Influence ID exercise, which I think is incredibly valuable if you're looking at creating the right first impression online.
This has been mind-blowing. Thank you so much. I really, really I can see why your company's doing well and why this book is going to be a smashing success, because I think you nailed it. Particularly where we are in the world today. So I want to wish you the best of success on your journey. First of all, thank you for being on the podcast. And for our listeners, just go order the book right now. We'll put the links in the show notes. Just order it right now. Because even if you don't think that you are the type of person that's going to be an influential person, you have to realize that people, how you do searches, how you validate is a big deal. Also, your friends, your kids, your families, or your coworkers may be going down a wrong rabbit hole and not understanding these fundamentals. So you'll be able to have a great conversation with them and direct it. So I predict this is going to be a world-class bestseller. So wow, amazing.
Thank you, Wade. It's been such a joy, just our conversation today. And at the end of the day, I just want to help entrepreneurs, business leaders realize that it can be done, and it doesn't have to be done with a massive budget. There's a way to win in this environment.
I love it. And for our listeners, I hope you loved it too. I'm Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers. This is the Awesome Health Podcast. A little deviation today, but you really need to understand it, because the people you are listening to online have probably done this process. And if you want to be one of them, you got to get on board now. So thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you on the next podcast.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip, rapid cheat meal relief. Research shows that cheat meals can actually be an effective way to boost your metabolism. One key weight loss hormone, leptin, can be increased by up to 30% following a cheat meal. The challenge with the cheat meals is that all those extra calories and lower food quality can be hard to digest, which means you could be totally sidelined with a food coma after big cheat meals. The solution is to take strong digestive enzymes like masszymes, which will help rapidly digest and break down the extra food. 3 to 5 capsules before or right after your cheat meal can make a huge difference in how you feel following the cheat meal. If it's a cheat day with multiple large meals, you might want to go up to 10 capsules or higher to help you power through all that food. To save 10% on masszymes, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and enter the code CHEAT10 at checkout.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.